Hi guys, Evante here. Welcome back for another week. So we've talked about branding, we've talked about advertising, and we've talked about content. And I've done my best to explain how those are different, even though they can feel like they're very much the same thing. Today, we're gonna dive into a bigger term. We're gonna dive into marketing and what exactly marketing is, what it means, all that kind of stuff. So buckle up. When we talk about branding, right, remember we're talking about perception. We're talking about the way that something makes you feel. When I look at my book cover, the branding aspect of the book cover is, why would you choose the color orange for your book cover? Well, it grabs people's attention, but it doesn't grab it in the way of a yellow book cover, which is a whole other longer story conversation. Advertising, right, is repeatedly telling people the same thing about your book over and over again. So if you look on the cover of my my YouTube banner, right, you see the line that says you have more power than you ever thought, or something like that. I don't remember it. I wrote it at one point and it's up there, right? That is more like advertising. If I were to run that as a paid advertisement, I'd be putting money behind it on Google, on Facebook, on television, on radio, on all of those places where we hear things pop up. Now remember, when we talked about advertising, I made a critical distinction. Used to be that when we talked ads, we specifically meant paid content because that was the way that those pieces got distributed. Now that content has changed and it's evolved and we have social media, we have streaming, we have all of these platforms, so is advertising. And it's really sometimes hard to say where an ad is rather than another piece of content, which leads us to the term of marketing. When we look at that whole space, right, of anything that's not the product, but we're talking about how we describe the product, how we bring the product to light, that is marketing. It's branding plus advertising plus sales plus a few other things, right? We're talking about any way a product or service is being communicated. And the focus on how that product or service is being communicated is what I would call marketing. When we look at what that means, that applies to a lot of things, right? So say if you are selling a book, right? This is a product. This is a solid, tangible product. And that's one of the things that makes us a product is that there's a physical thing or there's a tangible deliverable is a word that we would use where there's an exchange of money. Everything outside of the book itself and really the inside of the book is the book. The cover, what's on the back of the book, right? When you look on Amazon and you go and purchase the book, you'll see a description there, right? You'll see reviews, you'll see the imagery around it. You'll see on my LinkedIn, I have a cover, or on Facebook, I have this, or on Instagram, I have that. All of that is marketing. This video right now is marketing. And what is it marketing? It's marketing my book. It's true, but it's also marketing my brand as a strategist. So when we talk about marketing, it's a really broad term. And the way that it's become easier to define what marketing is to simply say it's everything that isn't the product. When we talk about customer support, that impacts the bottom line of a service. Have you ever gone somewhere and bought something and be like, wow, that was a terrible experience, I'm never coming back there? That whole concern of customer support falls under marketing. When we talk about selling a product and then those guys who call and they say, hey, I've got this thing, I want to sell it to you. And then they report back to that company and they say, hey, I made 50 calls, 30 of them went through, 5 of them sold. That's still marketing because there's not really a difference really between the person and doing it on a larger scale. I know some people will say there is, but there really isn't, right? If we look at this from a step to step place, for marketing to happen, you have to have a product or service defined. Right? That's the first thing. So regardless if you're doing that person to person, you're talking to someone, you're networking, you're on social media, you're in email, once you have your product or service, and then you're telling people what to do with that product and service, right? You're telling them to buy it, to subscribe, to like, comment, share, all of those things, right? That's all to push the product. Now, it can happen in roundabout ways. You may be going, how is this selling your book? Well, there's a reason that my book pops up in every video and that while I'm talking, I just have it here. I may not talk about power beats and rhymes very often, but you know me, you're getting to know me, you're getting to watch more of my content, you're getting to see the things that I talk about, and that helps you trust me. And eventually, that trust may just lead to you considering to check out my book. That step-by-step process can happen whether we're talking through video or we're talking to a one-on-one conversation. If I meet somebody off the street and they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm an author. It's usually not the term that I don't throw it out there that I'm an author, but like if I'm like, I'm a strategist and I wrote a book, right? Then from there, they want to know who I am. They want to know what I think about things, just like I'm sharing my thoughts with you right now. That whole process is marketing. In a way, we spend a lot of our time as human beings doing marketing. And honestly, it's just communication. We use different words. And I think that's the funniest thing for marketers, is that when we talk about things that marketing people do, is that we make up words to define the same thing. When you hear people talk about marketing, you'll hear us talk about it, and you'll hear us say that it's growth marketing or performance marketing or programmatic advertising or some other new doohickey thing. And while those are actual things, right, there's an actual piece there that is considered performance marketing or a piece that's considered email marketing, we have to understand that at the end of the day, you're talking to a person. And let's be real, you're talking to one person at a time. Even if you are shooting an ad, even if you're shooting an email, what you're doing is you're having a conversation with that person. You're having an engagement with that person, and that makes a huge difference, right? So when we break down the understanding of marketing, it's to acknowledge the fact that we are having a conversation, and a conversation is necessary to communicate the product or service that we're offering. Any way that that conversation takes place, whether if it's on a blimp, a billboard, a TV commercial, person to person, sales calls, emails, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all of it, streaming it on Twitch, any of those things, popping up on radio, having a conversation in an interview, getting a book review, having someone post about your stuff. You get what I'm saying here. Any way that we get someone to talk about and create conversation around our product or service, that is marketing. And it's cool because any way that we do marketing is an area for us to be aware of the brand. Anytime I'm having a conversation with somebody, I'm aware of how I'm coming across, right? I'm aware of the words that I'm using. I'm aware of how I'm standing. And like some of it is just because I'm an anxious introvert, but also part of it is just as a human being, we know where we're at, right? And if we're aware of the perception that we're giving off in a conversation, right? If I'm aware of how people feel when they see my book cover or when they read how I describe myself because I had to write the thing, or, you know, they look at my website, all of these pieces are part of marketing, and focusing on how they make a person feel is branding, right? And when we focus on the actual message that we want to hit them with over and over and over again, repeatedly until it hooks into their brain, that's really where I go, that's advertising. Now, what's the common thread between all of this? The common thread is content. Content is how brands, people, right? How companies create brands, how people create brands. Whether we're writing something, whether we're recording a video, whether we're running an ad or popping up on TV, all of that is content. All of that communicates something as a marketing effort. When we focus on the way that it makes you think about yourself, the way that it makes you think about others, the way that it makes you think about the world, that's branding. And that's why this channel is so important, because as we talk about content, we're not going to talk about a single form. We're going to talk about a lot of different content, but our focus is on how you perceive it, because the way you perceive it is going to choose the actions that you take, right? If you see me as a trustworthy guy, you're more likely to buy my book, but you don't know what's inside of this book. You're going to see a sample of it. You can go to my website and read chapter 3. You can go on Amazon. I think there's chapter 1, maybe, I don't know. But there are places where you can read parts of my book, but you don't really know what's in the book. You have to trust me. When you buy a product off a shelf, you don't know anything more than what that company is telling you about that product. You have to trust them. And that cornerstone of trust is really the battleground that we're going to talk about throughout this entire channel. Because if you tell these guys, we don't trust you, then the marketers and the advertisers and the brand people, they freak out and we listen, right? We understand that a product is a product is a product. A book is a book is a book until you read it and decide otherwise. A hammer is a hammer, right? But the one that's going to make you decide that this hammer is the right hammer for you, all that's going to come from marketing. All that's going to come from sales. All that's going to come from advertising. So if you tell us our advertising doesn't work, if you tell us our branding doesn't work, that it's not resonating, that it's not driving money, then suddenly you have a lot of power. In fact, you get to determine what works and what doesn't for us. All of our work is based off of research and data, and I'll dive into that at some point. But when you think about marketing, the thing you should remember is that we're begging you. I'm begging you to buy my book. I wrote it, I worked really hard on it, and I think it will change the way you see a lot of things in the world. But I can't make you buy it. And the part that says I can't make you do it is more power than you could ever imagine. So that's what marketing is. And as we continue through the one-on-ones and some other series that I'll have going on, like my brand takedowns, and eventually getting into how we actually talk about branding for certain organizations, businesses, and people, just keep this in mind, that at the end of the day, when we talk about marketing, what we have to understand is that you, the viewer, the consumer, the customer, is really in the driver's seat once you know what we're doing. See you next week. Thanks for watching. Make sure you, of course, like, comment, subscribe, do all of those great things. And if you know someone who could benefit from subscribing to this channel, especially as we're talking about things like this, go ahead and send them a video. That'll just help share this stuff out there, of course. And if you want, buy my book. It's on Amazon, 2-day shipping. We've got it.